Okay, good evening. We're going to call this meeting of the Lawndale City Council to order. I'm going to ask the city clerk to give us the roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Osborne.
Here.
Councilmember Suarez.
Here.
Councilmember Kearney.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Mayor Pullen Miles.
Here.
All present.
Thank you, madam. I'm going to ask Councilwoman Suarez to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask Pastor Bob Dabrisky from the Way to God Church to lead us in a word of inspiration.
Please stand. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing.
Let us pray. Lord, today I would like to remind everyone of how far we drifted from the good book. When we were young, we learned a nursery rhyme called Humpty Dumpty. It read, Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men could not put Humpty Dumpty together again. Many people don't know what that even means. The great fall was man. Adam fell. And therefore, all the armies of governments and all government agencies cannot put the world back together again. We live in a Humpty Dumpty world, and therefore only the Lord can fix it. Governments could put bandages on some of the problems, but understand that governments are to be used by God for His glory. And all God's people said, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Dabrisky, for these words of inspiration. We thank you for coming tonight. Put my glasses on. I think is that Steve's here? Yes. Okay, there we go. I mean, I really got to use my glasses these days. Okay, tonight we have a presentation by our senator representing Lawndale in the state senate, the Honorable Senator Stephen Bradford. He's going to come with the legislative report.
Give us some good news, Steve.
Give you the real news.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's truly an honor to come before you this evening and provide just a brief overview of the legislative year. It's a practice that I've started over the last 8 years since representing the independent cities that make up formerly my assembly district and now my Senate district. And as all of you are very much aware, but maybe some of the folks viewing from home, we just completed the first year of a 2-year legislative cycle. Our year goes from January and it ended on September 13th, and the governor had another 30 days after that to sign all bills. So at midnight on October 13th, a week ago yesterday, all bills had been signed, and I'm just here to report on some of the progress we made. Again, we did tremendous work this year in addressing housing and homeless crisis, providing millions, if not billions of dollars to help address some of the problems with Section 8 and hopefully streamlining that process and making it easier for folks to qualify and get into affordable housing. Also, an issue we're dealing with right now is wildfire protection and putting some of those measures to go forth to make sure that we harden our infrastructure and protect those residents who live in those more fire-prone districts. Prioritizing public education by securing $50 million in mental health funding and a $15 million bond ballot measure to fund a new classrooms, labs for K through 12. So we're making one of the biggest investments in a long time in our school system. Also a priority of areas in the 35th Senate District is safe and clean drinking water and making sure that we provide infrastructure improvements there. And just overall preventing, reducing food insecurities for students, as we see in a lot of our community colleges as well as our colleges, now food pantries. So we're helping address some of those issues with kids, especially K through 12, who come to school on a daily basis without proper nourishment. So making free and reduced lunches available to more students as we move forward. I'll just quickly move to some of the measures that I introduced. This year, I introduced 20 measures, 13 of which made it to the governor's desk, and of those 13, 10 were signed. The first measure was SB 155, which clarifies existing requirements to help state achieve existing renewable and zero carbon goals, so helping our environment through these measures. SB 206, one that probably all of you here have heard about over the last 3 weeks. It's been the most talked about bill in the nation. It's the Fair Pay to Play Act, the bill that will allow athletes starting in 2023 to monetize their name, likeness, and image. I and Nancy Skinner authored that bill, and it's one that's gotten a whole lot of attention, and a lot of folks say, why is that really important? It's vitally important because the majority of these athletes will never play pro sports. Many succumb to injuries that they will have for the rest of their lives from concussions and things of this nature. And for the most part, for many of them, the only opportunity to really take advantage of that is during their college careers. So if you're a scholarship athlete, you're the only person on college that can't take advantage of your name, likeness, and image. If you're a scholarship student and you're on a music scholarship and you write a song, you can take advantage of that. If you're a scholarship student in computer science and you develop an app, you can monetize that. If you're a, like I say, a music major, you can teach music lessons. But if you're a scholarship swimmer, you can't teach swim lessons. Football player, you can't give football lessons. You can't get paid to do any of that. And you can't even sign your name on your jersey for a fee. So it allows us to change what has been in existence for well over 50 years, where the NCAA has made billions of dollars off of these athletes. 50% of the athletes that are from the revenue generating sports are individuals of color, and they only make up 3% of the student body population. And this incentivizes these young folks to stay in school, because many of them leave early for the monetary benefits because they come from lower economic families. So we're excited about that. Our next one is SB 255, which adapts existing energy supplier diversity initiatives to suit our 21st century electric grid. As you know, Junior Order 156 was introduced over 40 years ago, which encourages utilities to contract with women-owned, minority-owned, disabled, veteran-owned businesses. 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we didn't have renewable power then, so we're seeing now in the renewable energy space, in the green space, use those same provisions on the cable side as well, adhere to Junior Order 156 and provide procurement and contracting opportunities for those businesses. SB 269 extends the time to apply for compensation for individuals who were wrongly convicted and were proven innocent. There are hundreds of individuals, if not thousands, who are in prison today for a crime they did not commit, and once they're released with nothing. This allows them to secure $140 per day for every day that they were wrongfully convicted. We think it's only fair, it's only just, and so we're excited about that as well. SB 322 allows workers to speak freely in a hospital setting. I know Ms. Huffman is a former nurse. There are regulations that existed that if a nurse saw a violation and she chose to report that, there were barriers that prevented that. If the California Department of Public Health wasn't on site at the time, this now allows them to report a violation. It only makes the work environment safe, and more importantly, the patients that are being treated in those medical facilities safe. And SB 455 creates a California financial fund administered by the Department of Business Oversight. We've all heard about the online lenders, the title loan companies, the payday companies, and we've all, regardless of what your opinions are, folks say, well, they're taking advantage of people. Well, of the bad actors, the DOB, Department of Business Oversight, collects fines from those businesses every year. Those fines have accrued to millions of dollars. This bill now allows those funds to be reinvested into nonprofit organizations in our communities to to provide financial literacy and low-income loans to those individuals, be it for personal need, for a business opportunity. So it's money well spent. It's not new tax dollars. It's money that's being collected by these so-called bad actors that have been accruing, and we're saying, let's allocate $1 million a year to nonprofits and allow them to administer programs that work directly with people in your community who need that assistance. And SB 676 lowers the overall cost associated with California a growing number of electric vehicles, so it helps us with the infrastructure. We all talk about electric vehicles, but what we have to do is make sure the infrastructure is put in there. So this bill helps us to make sure that as we build out this infrastructure, we make sure that we can load balance where we don't cause unnecessary blackouts and make sure we have the necessary power to service those charging stations. And real quick, from a budgetary standpoint, we were able to secure $7.5 million for Charles Stewart University, which is just a little east of here. It graduates more doctors of color than any other medical school in this nation, so this will help with recruitment throughout the South Bay region to go through that medical school. We also secured funds for, again, individuals who have been released from incarceration and help them enter a career in mental health studies. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Okay, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Go ahead with your question.
I'll say Steve, because we've known each other many years.
Wherever.
You know, I attended the league conference last week, and one of the presentations in there was stating during this luncheon that we were at that in the state Senate, for the first time in history, there's not a single Republican. It's all Democrat.
No, it's not. We got 11.
They said it. I'm talking state Senate. This
We
is
have
what they
11
said.
state senators.
Yeah,
They're
all
Republicans.
Democrat. No, not a single Republican in there.
We have 11.
You're saying 11, and this representative is
There
wrong?
are 11. Want me to name them?
Sure.
Shannon Grove is the the Republican leader.
Uh-huh.
Ling Ling Chang, Pat Bates from Orange County, Scott Wilk from Antelope Valley, Santa Clarita.
Okay, I'll take your word.
Yeah,
for
we
it.
have-
So
we
this
have 11
league
of them.
rep is wrong?
Yes, he's very much wrong. If you're paying him, you need your money back.
Yeah.
There's 11 Republicans.
He said that to the entire room of
He
fellow
He
electeds.
couldn't be more wrong than man anymore.
And we were thinking, really,
Shannon
is this the
Grove
case?
is the minority leader, the Republican leader from Bakersfield, good friend of mine, Ms. Bates, Jim Nilsson, who's the dean of the Senate, who has 30-plus years in the legislature. Jim
Well, I think
Nilsson,
we're going to have to contact the League of California Cities and
Without a
say,
doubt. Without a doubt.
issue a refund or hiring bad speakers.
without a doubt, that's some bad information.
Anyway, I do have another question for
Okay.
you. Like any city, the transient problem seems to just continue to grow out of control. And the one tool that has been available to law enforcement is the 5150 hold. And I was speaking with the attorney earlier, and that's a 3-day hold. So it becomes a revolving door. And so there's individuals that are brought in, and the neighbors, they complain to the sheriffs come and take them away, and then they're right back out doing the same problems right in their neighborhood 3 days later. Is there any way that the legislature can author legislation to increase that time on the hold? To
Well-
a couple weeks, a month, something like that?
Well, we're trying to avoid the 5150 when not necessary. My mother's a psych nurse, and many times those folks who are held on 5150 aren't not really the ones with the mental problems, they're the ones with the drug problems. But we just had a LA caucus policy retreat last Friday at UCLA, and this issue was one of the topic of discussions. And when we talk about the LA County Caucus, that's of Democrats and Republicans who represent LA County, and this issue was at the top of our list of how we provide more temporary but longer housing for these individuals, which truly is needed because a lot of these folks do have mental problems, and yes,
Right.
there is a revolving door. So the 5150 issue was discussed, and we don't want them because we're taking up those beds there. So we want to have because longer
I can
term-
understand certain individuals that,
Yeah,
you know,
we want to
are
hold
being
them longer
misidentified.
because it takes more than, as they say, 3 days to get them right, get them back on their
Right.
meds. So yeah, to keep.
So do you see in the future
Yeah,
a chance
we're
to
looking at
increase
that.
that?
We identified 4 categories that we want to focus as a Democratic caucus from LA County, which is a caucus of 36, I believe, or 38 members. Again, both Democrats and Republicans. And The homeless issue is one of them. The environment is another one, transportation, and I'm drawing a blank on the fourth one, but, public safety.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed. And I'm speaking as a nonpartisan. I don't belong to a party.
I get it.
But when that speaker said that at the league, everybody just, their eyes
No.
rolled and thought, really?
No, not at all. As
Now
we
you
say,
had
fake
all your
news.
fellow electeds from the region
Yeah.
in that audience.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions of our esteemed senator?
Well, I was going to say from that one, just kind of a follow-up, a lot of times those are not even a 72-hour hold, so
Exactly.
it's broken.
Yeah.
So definitely want to fix it. Well, thank you very much for the updated information.
Yeah, I just wanted to, no questions, but I just wanted to say thank you for showing up and being one of our representatives that does come and speak to its constituents, so I would appreciate that. Thank you.
I appreciate it. As you know, I represent 1 million people, 7 independent cities, and I try to keep both local electeds as well as the constituents aware of that which we do. Again, I'm in Sacramento from January to September, so when people see us at home, first question is, what are you doing at home? I said, well, I live here and the legislative year is out, and I want to be able to do events such as this to come and update the community on the things that we've been doing.
And Senator, I want to thank you as well for coming once again, as you do every year, to give your legislative update, and for all that you do in Sacramento on our behalf there in the legislature. Of course, in my day job, I also work for the legislature. Of course, you know that, and I've been there for a while, and so you get to know all the members of the Assembly and the Senate, and you know those who are putting in overtime, and you're truly a representative that puts in overtime for your cities, not just for the city of Lawndale, although we do appreciate that, but you put in overtime for all of your communities. And as one of your Assembly staffers, as you know, I travel throughout the Senate district or what have you, and you're in your district and you're doing the work in your district, and everyone appreciates you as being their senators in the district, and we appreciate all the hard work you have done and that you continue to do in the Senate. I want to thank you for these bills that you sponsored this year. 10 bills signed by the governor. This is a great accomplishment. I want to thank you for that, and I want to thank you for the bills that you highlighted tonight. There was one bill that I want to highlight very quickly that's on your list that you were able to accomplish, and that's SB 595. Mm-hmm. So SB 595 is one of those conversations that some people are more comfortable having than others, but it's a cannabis bill. Mm-hmm. And this bill speaks to equity, making sure that the cannabis industry is equitable, certainly in terms of those who have been affected by the war on drugs. And we know there's communities that's been effective more so on the war of drugs than other communities. This bill seeks to make sure that they have an opportunity, sort of like you saw with prohibition of alcohol, have an opportunity to be part of the industry. There's a lot of money in the cannabis industry. There's a lot of big players that is attempting to saturate this industry when it really should be from the local small business owners, and especially in particular those who have been ill affected by the war on drugs. And this bill will help to address and remove those barriers. And so this is one of those important bills, whether you believe cannabis is a good thing or not, whether you partake or not, consume or not, whether it's in your city or not. It is legal in the state of California and throughout the nation. Frankly, it's even becoming more acceptable for municipal use and others, and it's a $1 billion industry. And our communities have to make sure that we have equitable policies. And so we want to thank you for making sure that this is an equitable opportunity for this industry.
I appreciate it, Mr. Mayor, and my wanting to speed through this and not hold you up. I just glossed over that one, but if I can amplify that a little bit more, 595 is a fee waiver and deferral. What we've seen in the last 18 and to 20 months since this has been legal adult use in California, and let's understand, it's both medicinal and psychotropic. And there's more medicinal use growing right now in California than the recreational use of, I want to get a buzz. And that's vitally important that we need to understand. But many times when we talk about cannabis and the business itself, we think of two ends of the industry, growing or selling. Well, we need testing labs. We need testing labs in the worst way. That's what we're trying to encourage communities to put testing labs. If you want to make sure this product is safe, be it for psychotropic or adult use or medicinal use, it needs to be tested. And so we're trying to encourage cities to understand that. For that edible product, for that child who needs that drop, that under the, or the lozenge that they now are taking, the and seizures, it has to be cooked or manufactured somewhere. So we need commercial kitchens as well. You need delivery services. You need packaging. You need all those things that come in to running the businesses. There are now 17 different licenses that you can acquire, but you'd be surprised at the roadblocks that working everyday people with business acumen and the resources to do it run into because of all the state regulations. So it's vitally important. And again, what we're trying to say is we want to bring it to the daylight. It's legal in California. But if we bury our heads, it's not going to make it go away. All we're going to do is encourage the underground market to expand. So we want folks to come to the daylight, be legal, get your license and operate. But again, quit thinking about just growing and selling, and understand there's a myriad of business opportunities and need in that space. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
And I must add, there's $40 million with that as well to assist businesses that will make available in those cities with diversity programs as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your report.
Thank you, Mr.
for
Mayor.
coming again.
Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
Council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda is our public safety report. Captain Leo is going to give our public safety report. Let's have our lieutenant. I just upgraded you to captain and then you're lieutenant. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm here tonight to present the Public Safety Report for October 7th through October 20th. On October 8th in the evening, Deputies Thomas and Ventura responded to the 15,800 block of Hawthorne Boulevard regarding a man with a knife who had threatened the victim. Responding units detained a male matching description in the call. The victim said the suspect entered Mr. J's liquor store, took 2 bags of chips, and exited the store. The suspect pushed the victim down and punched him. The suspect fled the store, but a short time later, the same suspect confronted a pedestrian with a razor blade. This victim, who was in fear for his life, ran to a deputy to respond to the area. The deputy detained the suspect, who positively identified the suspect, who was possibly identified by the victims in a field show. The suspect was arrested for robbery and assault with a deadly weapon and booked at South Los Angeles Station. On October 13th at 10 a.m., Deputy Green conducted a traffic stop of a vehicle at 147th Street and Lawrence Avenue for numerous violations. Upon contacting the driver, Deputy Green could smell the strong odor of fresh marijuana emitting from the vehicle. He asked the occupants if there was anything illegal in the vehicle. One occupant stated he was in possession of a methamphetamine pipe. All 3 occupants were detained pending a narcotics investigation. While searching for the source of the marijuana, Deputy Green discovered a loaded firearm secreted in the door panel. The driver, who was within easy reach of the weapon, was arrested for possession of an unregistered loaded firearm, and a second suspect was arrested for an outstanding parole warrant. Both were transported and booked at South Los Angeles Station. On October 14th, 2019, at approximately 1900 hours, deputies responded to the 4000 block of Rosecrans Avenue and contacted the juvenile victim, who was involved in a fight with a male suspect who tried to stab him with a box cutter. Another male suspect drove a car into the juvenile victim, knocking him to the ground. Both suspects left the location in the car. A report from an assault with a deadly weapon was taken at that time, since the suspects and the car were not located. On October 16, 2019, at approximately 1300 hours, Motor Deputy Cohen, while on a traffic stop of another unrelated car, recognized the car that was involved in that assault from the 14th. Deputy Cohen requested additional units to respond and safely took the occupants into custody. One of the occupants, who matched one of the assault suspects, was arrested for assault with a deadly weapon and booked at South Los Angeles Station. This concludes my report, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Is there any questions of the Lieutenant Safety Report?
No questions. Thank you for the activities.
All right, thank you, Lieutenant. Next up, is there any items from the Clerk's Department?
Yes, sir. There are 4 items I'd like to remind residents about. The first one being that this weekend, West Basin Municipal Water District is holding their 24th Annual Water Festival. It is October 26th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Edward C. Little Water Recycling facility located in El Segundo. The next one is to remind residents that Lawndale's having their annual Halloween haunt on Thursday, October 31st from 4 to 8 p.m. at the Civic Center Plaza. Come out for the haunted house, the costume contest, entertainment, games, live DJ, and much, much more. All activities are free. The third announcement is from November 7th to the 11th, Lawndale's going to be hosting its 4th annual Field of Honor. Information on how to purchase a flag and participate in the event will be on the city website, or if you don't have access to a computer, just call the City Hall and they'll be more than happy to help you. And the last announcement I have is the Office of the City Clerk is accepting applications currently for the Media Technology Advisory Committee. If you have an interest in technology or have ideas on how the city can best use technology and media to connect with the community, please apply for through our office. And one last thing. The Centinela Valley High School District is recruiting for positions on their Citizens Oversight Committee. For more information, please contact the City Clerk's office. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is oral communications. Oral communications, we have the opportunity to speak to this body on items that are not on the agenda. If you'd like to speak to this body on items that are not on the agenda, we ask that you line up by the flag. When it becomes your turn, if you would come to the podium, if you would start with your name first, we would appreciate that. At about 2 minutes, the amber light will come on to give you the signal to start wrapping things up. Let's have our first speaker. Yes, sir. That's you. Right here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and City Council.
Yeah.
I'd just like to comment since I've been hearing about public safety and all that's been
Do me a
happening.
favor and start with your name for us, if you don't
Oh,
mind.
yeah, sure. I'm sorry. My name is Edgar Murillo, and I'm a resident of your great city, Lawndale,
Thank
for
you.
20 years. I'm 20 years old, by the way.
Okay.
And I'm a college student, and I just came here tonight to say that I've been hearing a lot about public safety and what's all been going on around here about what the police, whoever officer, that how bad it is. Well, I just want to say that there's a way around to make Lawndale, the city of Lawndale, a safe city, and by doing that, we have to turn the city of Lawndale into a Second Amendment sanctuary city to allow our residents to defend themselves. And if you want to put up the vote next time and add to the agenda, why not?
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Johnny Castro, Kingsdale Avenue, Lawndale. I'd like to possibly maybe give us a summary of what's going on with the Metro Rail that was discussed here about a year or 2 years ago. Just like to know what's going on, whether it's still on. I know they had a couple of 3 or 4 options available. One of them was crossing right through the middle of Lawndale. And I'm not sure if they've postponed it or what's going on right now. So if you can give us a brief summary on that.
Yes, sir. We'll give you a brief summary. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Regina Brown, and I'm a resident of Lawndale. And I guess we kind of all have the same concerns, and I'll try to make this quick. It has to do with the Metro extension that they talked about last year. And I do ride it in the afternoons coming back from work, and it's kind of coincide with the drug problems that we're kind of having with the marijuana and homelessness. They're all really being an influx of it over in the area where the Marine Park and Ride is, along the backside where Costco's is. The area is completely dead. There's nothing there for them, and lots of people are riding the train. that I have had to witness and be in the presence of on with them doing what they do on there. And also, real quickly, is there going to be rent control in our area since we're part of LA County? And I have a lot more, but I know my time is very limited, so thank you.
Excuse me, would you repeat?
Thank you, madam.
Would you repeat the last part? I didn't understand. Is there an update with the county with what?
I know we're part of Los Angeles County. Is Lawndale going to be part of rent control?
Oh, part of rent control, I didn't.
Yes.
We'll speak on that when everyone's have an opportunity to
Okay.
speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm Kevin Brown's, the late Kevin Brown's sister.
Oh, okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Romero, and I'm the library manager over at Lawndale Library. And I just wanted to update you guys on a few of the programs that we have coming up soon. So beginning October 29th, we have our parent-child workshops, and that's a 5-week workshop for parents and their children ages 0 to 3 to come out to the library and have playtime and take advantage of the resource specialists that we have available for them. On Wednesday, October 30th, we have our Haunted Library Escape Room for teenagers. We're gonna turn our meeting room into an escape room. So we invite all our teens out, and that's gonna be from 4 to 6 p.m. And on Thursday, October 31st, we're just gonna have an art activity and trick-or-treating also at the library. Kids can have the opportunity to stop by at each reference desk and get candy. And that is gonna be from 3 to 4. And then we also have Dia de los Muertos coming up. That's Friday, November 1st from 4 to 5, and that is a teen event. So we encourage everyone to come out if they can. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Ham, London 171st. Talked to the captain, wanted to thank the officer who just assisted a lady whose car had stalled on Hawthorne Boulevard on my way down here. So it was very nice to see an officer helping push her car, even though he's using his vehicle, out of the way of traffic. There is constantly people parked at Uno Pizza or whatever the heck it's called down by me on Hawthorne Boulevard during the no parking time. And I wish to God somebody would just take those cars and shove them up there because they're going to cause a nasty accident. Many times people they're going down this road and all of a sudden, there it is, and boom, there they are cutting you off. I get it, but when it causes that bad accident, then what? So I am in full belief that we need to start not just ticketing, but towing. Because I don't want to see somebody die because some ignorant fool needed their pizza fix or whatever. So something really needs to be done. I still don't understand why the residents of Lawndale do not seem to understand that there are times when there are permits needed. You should always check with the city, see if you need a permit before you do something. There's a house on 166, and I've turned it in, I don't care. First they put in their parking pad, next thing you know, they got a 4-foot or more solid fence. And, oh, yeah, so I would assume that the code enforcement officer had already been there to say something, give them a little notice. But now I see they've painted their fence too, so they're beautifying it. Isn't that lovely? I guess they think they're going to keep it, but not if I have anything to say about it. And the hedge, oh my God, the beautiful hedge on 171st. I'd just like to know if y'all feel really good about bending over, to help those people and then getting it shoved back in your face. I'm really sorry that it turned out that way because it's a shame. It really is. But it seems to be the way, unfortunately, a lot around this city. But hey, Mr. Moore for city manager, yay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we're going to close public comments and bring it up to the diocese for any comments from the council. Let's start with our colleague, Councilman Daniel Reed.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank everybody that spoke tonight. In Johnny, I think I'm going to pass on as far as the Metro information, and this also goes for Ms. Brown. On Metro, as far as the update to the Green Line extension, we can get that from the Metro website. I have not seen anything recently, but if city attorney
Why don't
or
we see
city
if
manager
the
knows anything coming
Community
up.
Development Department might
Yeah.
have a brief summary on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council and members of the audience. We've been in touch with Metro concerning the 405 improvement project as well as the Green Line. As of right now, Metro's still working on their selection. I believe they're selecting their consultant, the environmental consultant, for both the environmental impact report and the environmental impact statement report that they're preparing. Nothing as of yet has been moved forward to the city. I'm sure certainly they'll notify us of a notice of preparation of the both documents respectively.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And also in regards to the area and the activity and the condition of there, might speak to Redondo Beach. That would be a good thing. All right, and I will pass it on.
Mr. Pat Kearney.
I just want to thank everyone that spoke tonight, and Ms. Romero, thank you for your report on the library. I'll pass it on to my colleague to my right.
Councilman Suarez.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to everybody that came out, and I'm just going to pass it on. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Osborne.
I have a little bit to add to the Metro thing. At that league conference last week, Mark Durking, who's the public relations guy for Metro, was there. And about a week before, I was contacted by a resident of Redondo. She wanted to know what the status was on the lost potential of one of our #1 tax generating businesses with a new station. And we were told that's off the table. And I spoke to the representative who confirmed that that's still the case, so that we're not getting a station in the city. And then I asked again what was the status on the project itself, and he said everything's still moving forward. However, it had been delayed, maybe 6 months, a year, it was uncertain. It's still coming, but it has been delayed.
Yeah, what I heard, that Metro did not receive some anticipated funding from the federal government, although the project is in fact still on the table, and that might be the reason for the delay. But as it stands now, like our community development director stated, in short, they're still in the process of selecting the alternative 1 or 2 to analyze for the environmental impact report and statements. And so when the environmental impact, after the end, they'll do the environmental impact report, and that's when you really start to see movement once that environmental impact report comes out, and then people can kind of tell whether or not their issue has been addressed in terms of the environment or so, and then they'll probably at that point, well, they have no choice at that point to have hearings and things of that nature concerning the environmental impact report. I wanted to add, is that all?
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. I want to also thank everyone who spoke tonight as well. Ms. Brown asked, one question she asked was about rent control. As we know, notwithstanding the LA County, I'm not really sure what the LA County rent control measure is about because we're the city of LA, but we will fall under, of course, the state that just passed, the rent control measure in the state that passed. So there is some portion of rent control here in the city of Lawndale. Of course, you gotta be within the provisions of, and it's not for every piece of property. Certainly, one piece of property that's not captured in that bill is single family homes, but multifamily homes is captured, and so it's a different depending on what type of house a person live in. They will be subject to that state bill. And so because of that, a lot of cities who may have been thinking about some type of rent control, basically the state bill basically mandates it now. So that's where we pretty much are with that. And with that, I think that's all I had. Let's see, that's all I had, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's all I have tonight. So we'll move our agenda and close oral communications and comments by the council. And we're now at item H, which is the consent calendar. What is the pleasure of this body concerning the consent calendar?
If there are no questions, I'll make a motion to approve. And I just wanted to point out, I wanted to say thank you to our assistant city clerk for looking into our contract with Spectrum and renegotiating those fees. So thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, so it's been motion to accept the consent calendar by Suarez and seconded by Reed. Is there any discussion on the consent calendar? Okay, would the council please vote on the consent calendar?
Motion approved unanimously.
Okay, thank you, madam. Next item, item number 7 under administration, budget update, quarterly. Let's hear from our treasurer.
Thank you. Okay, I prepared a report for fiscal year end. The reason it wasn't as quickly as the end of fiscal year is because we have a 60-day period in which we accrue revenue and expenses back to the ending fiscal year. If we had services at the end of June, but we paid it within 60 days of that, the expense would be in that fiscal year. So now that we have our accounting entries done for our accrual periods, what you're looking at is our final fiscal year 18-19 numbers. I've highlighted the general fund as well as other funds. These are, of course, unaudited numbers. The audit will be done by the end of December, which will have final numbers that could be modified a little bit with any audit adjustments, just so you can take that into consideration. Kind of summarizing the general fund, we ended the fiscal year with an additional $569,000 over budget, so actual came in more. The main reason being charges for services, which are building and planning permits, property taxes, and that has to do with our land sale, and then also sales taxes, and that has to do with a change in the system at the state level, recording some revenue in this fiscal year as opposed to the previous. I'm recommending a budget adjustment to increase our revenue, $566,000. As you can see on page 2 of the report, it has all the accounts just kind of rounded, so I looked at the significant numbers. Our expenditures for the general fund appears to be $338,000 unspent. But if we look at it a little bit closer, what that actually includes is $401,000 of capital projects that were unspent at the end of the year. We have savings from police services, municipal services, and then we have a few overrun areas, which include public works, city attorney, planning, building, and street maintenance. Overruns include things such as money that we budgeted in other funds, but maybe we didn't fulfill all the direct hours, so indirect could not be absorbed by those funding sources, so the general fund would have to absorb those costs. Or there were a couple grants that expired during the year because we did not have a director at one time. Some of those costs we could recover, some we could not, and it's in detail in the report. And then planning, building, that one has to do with contract services. That directly relates to our reimbursement, the increase in revenue. We spent more and we received more revenue that offset it. So that's kind of the net of what the overs and unders are for the general fund. Also, one of the things I wanted to highlight is I looked at all the funds at the end of the year. You can see what the fund balance was at the beginning of the year, revenue, expenses, and end of the year. There were several funds that had negative balances when I came into the city. I went in and analyzed those to determine the reason why. Out of the 5 funds looked at, 2 of them we are going to get reimbursement in the future. 3 of them were negatives because of either funding sources not continuing or just over expenditures. What I mentioned before, maybe we didn't have enough direct costs to absorb all the indirect. There was a certain percent on those indirect that we could charge, so the excess had to go back to the general fund. But out of the 3 that are, actually one of the grants ended, it was audited, there were costs incurred in the fund that weren't reimbursed. So those need to be charged back to the general fund. Anything in the current year, I went ahead and reallocated those back to the general fund. But the negatives that were prior period, those have to actually go against the fund balance. So I am recommending a budget adjustment to make those funds whole, primarily so we can close them. That's $186,000. And then gas tax, we overexpended that as well, $86,000. I'm proposing an operating transfer from the general fund for that. And in my report, I made a comment what the impact of these would be on the general fund. Unfortunately, I added this comment at the last minute, and I said it would be over 100%. That is not accurate. I need to look at what the unrestricted fund balance is. There are some costs that we don't post except in the financial statements, such as receivables for our successor agency. We need to offset those because it's non-expendable money, and also land and some other things. So our unrestricted fund balance for the general fund is $7.6 million, of which general fund budget for 1920 is $14.7 million. So our reserves at the end after these adjustments would end up being, the general fund would be 52% funded. Now, the reason it is that high as opposed to a lower number is we did take out of the 1920 year, we reallocated some of our departments and took them out of the general fund and put them in their own funds. And that would be community development and community services. If we added those back in the budget, it would be 46% funded. In addition, some of the money that we took out $1.4 million for the general plan this year, that we designated that. So I took that out of the calculation showing that it's not available. So that's why the percent is lower. So I figure council would want to know that number. Looking at our other funds, I looked at our budget to actual comparisons. And at the end of the year, most of them, I think I've explained them. At the end of the year, most of the things that is left has to do with capital projects, that the projects are still ongoing. Anything that we've completed the project or there's not money available, the funding source isn't there, we didn't continue it. Anything that was currently going on, we continued that into the 1920 budget, about $8.6 million. So, in conclusion, all of this, what I'm recommending is that we increase the general fund budget to match what actual increase came in, that we do a fund transfer for the gas tax, and that the three negative funds, $186,000 approximately, that we take money from the general fund balance and use that to make those funds whole so that we can close them out so that we don't continue to carry negative funds forward. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you for that report. Are there any questions of the report?
I have one. We used to hear, Tiffany would recall when Ken Louie gave the report, he was factoring in the receivables to give us it was 120% at one time. And I remember Steve saying we'd no longer do that.
Right, because
It's not realistic.
right, because they're long-term receivables.
Yeah,
right.
It wasn't false, but it was not, let's say, a current, accurate
Well, it arguably is
picture.
false
It
because
wasn't proper.
Well, it's not proper, but also it's arguably false because what we saw happen when redevelopment
It's like a lot of money you're owed, but you
dissolved.
don't have it on hand.
Well, and the state decided that some of what we thought we were owed, we weren't owed anymore.
Right.
And so some of that money did go away.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just brought back those.
Just a
Yeah.
comment, so
Yes,
the
sir.
new reporting and the analysis that's gone into that is helpful. It gives us a more clear picture, so
Thank you.
very much appreciate that.
Are there any additional questions? I just have one or two questions. I want to highlight some of these overruns. I was wondering what's the justification for these overruns? In particular, like, say for instance, we have a $95,000 operational overrun in the Community Development Department, and this is the Building and Safety Services, which is, of course, is contracted by through LA County. So how do we get an overrun? How does that work? I mean, I know what an overrun is, but why such a significant amount?
It was highlighted in the third quarter budget update, but it wasn't What I did is I brought forth budget adjustments for anything that was 100,000 or more. It was under that, so this one I did not bring forward, but it is offset by the revenue that came in. If you'd look at the revenue under charges for services, it's actually over 95,000.
Okay, so it's offset.
So that one is, the expense generates revenue because it's a reimbursable, so those do offset one another.
Okay, got it, okay. And there's one other, I think I highlighted. You also mentioned attorney services. Is that how does that work? Tell me about that, 89,000. Are we not allocating enough for legal services in our annual budget? I know you made a notation that we perhaps should change that.
The reason I went back and showed you the history of it is because I think they looked at, in the past, and I can't speak for the previous finance director, but what it looks like is they looked at the general fund overall was good, so they did not adjust it from year to year. And my practice is a little bit different. I want to look at every single budget, and if it's over, I want to recommend recommendations. Either we increase a budget or we decide to decrease service to become in balance. And it looks like neither of those happened, so I just wanted to bring it to your attention that saying it's overrun this year isn't anything new. There's a history that the actual amount and the budget amount were out of sync traditionally.
Okay. And we want to try to bring it more in sync. That's going to be your recommendation by
Correct.
changing the-
If you decide we need this much service from the city attorney, we need to increase the budget. If we decide we want to reduce the service, then we just need to monitor it and make sure that we stay within the budget, one way or another, bringing it in sync.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Give me just a second. Okay, I understood that. Seemed like I had another highlighted one, but I want to make sure. Okay, that's all I have. Anyone else have any questions concerning the report?
No, I just want to say thank you to staff. Thanks for looking into some of these things. And, it's kind of we're looking at it a little bit differently. So we appreciate you walking us through all the changes that you've been making.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll just receive and file. You want a motion? Okay, let's have a motion on that. So we can be totally. Okay, what is the pleasure concerning item number 8 of this body?
If there's no questions, I'll make a motion that we.
Let's make that item number 7. So the motion been made that we accept the finance director's budget update by Suarez and seconded by Mr. Pat Kearney. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, would the council please vote?
Motion approved unanimously.
Thank you. Next item number 8, residential property report. Let's have the staff report. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, members of the audience. This item before you was on October 7, 2019, the City Council introduced and approved the first reading of Ordinance 1164-19 to amend the Lawndale Municipal Code pertaining to residential property reports. As I mentioned, the council had a discussion about moving forward. Revisions were made to the ordinance as directed by council. And it is recommended the City Council adopt the ordinance 1164-19. I wanted to bring to your attention, though, additionally, we added into the staff report for your information that code enforcement officers will continue to make any noted violations while conducting residential property report inspections, and that are visible to them during inspection, even those violations outside of the garage. So we just want to make that very clear. Also, my colleague, Michael Reyes from MSD, wanted to provide some background information for additional information to the council. This concludes my report, and I'll turn it over to Michael.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. Just in speaking or discussing last week's council meeting, Sean and I were talking about just wanted to clarify some things for you regarding our inspections. We don't typically enter the homes at all unless we're invited or unless there's the only access to the garage is through the home. So typically when doing the residential reports or any inspections, we're not going to go in the home without permission from the homeowner. But typically we can get 100% of our inspection completed from outside of the home. Our concern was in enforcement-wise, if we are inspecting a garage and we have to pass an inoperable vehicle, or we have to see trash cans out or things like that, we want to make sure that we would still, your directive is that we would still enforce those things. Currently, we do about 20 to 30 of these reports per month. About 15 of those 30 result in cases. Only about a third of them are related to garages. So about 10 per month are going to be for other things not related to garages. So we just wanted to give those numbers to you and see if that was something you wish us to continue. Of course, we have no way one way or the other. Whatever directive you would like us to go is fine with us. We just wanted to clarify that in case there's any confusion on how the inspections are run.
Okay, great. Thank you for that reports. Are there any discussion?
Yes, I have. I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I have lots of things that I wanted to bring to the table and give my, my feelings on this whole voluntary versus involuntary inspection. It was my understanding that we were going to make the whole inspection voluntary, including the garage. And just to point some updates that occurred since the last meeting, there were a few bills that the governor signed with regards to garages. So we had AB 881, which removes impediments to ADU construction by restricting local jurisdictions' permitting criteria. SB 13, which creates a tiered fee structure, which charges ADUs more fairly based on their size and location. Bill addresses other barriers by lowering application approval timeframes, creating an avenue to get unpermitted ADUs up to code, and enhancing an enforcement mechanism, allowing the state to ensure that localities are following ADU statutes. And then there was also AB 671, which requires local government housing plans to encourage affordable ADU rentals. And so it seems like it's one of those things where, eventually I don't even know how much we are going to be able to restrict these garage conversions. I also had another concern in that throughout the years that inspection report had gone through some changes. And so I think in 2007 it wasn't quite what it was a few years later. And so what we ended up having, which came to my attention, one in particular, a resident was upset that her residential report was not passing, and apparently the requirements had changed. So she thought that it had, she was done, everything was permitted, just to come to find out that, it wasn't the same inspection she had had. And so I think just for our sakes, I just think that we should stay out, make it voluntary. If the homeowner, the buyer, the seller, if they want to have a city inspect it, then I think that they can, go that route. But if other than that, then I just think that, too, if we go to the property and we're required to report something, it kind of puts the city in the middle. So I feel like at least if they outreach to us that they want the inspection, we can give it to them. If not, and then with these new bills coming into fruition, I think that I think it should be all optional.
Staff is aware of those new changes with the Senate bills. We discussed that also. We do understand that ADUs are going to be much more permissible in a very short amount of time. Again, MSD has no preference whether to keep or discontinue the practice. We just wanted to clarify the way inspections are run.
And to add to that, there still is a process that has to be gone through. It's ministerial and the timeframes are shortened, but people can't just arbitrarily say, oh, my garage is now an ADU and there's nothing you can do about it. We need to make sure it's done safely.
No, I understand that, but one of my concerns too is these are just the beginning of bills that are coming into law. I feel like eventually it's going to become something where the cities are penalized for not trying to make these ADU units work and whatnot. So I think for the time being, if they want it to be inspected, that's their option. There's many disclosures that these buyers sign that state, you need to look at your local municipality and see what their restrictions are. And that's my feeling. I'm going to vote that that make this all optional. So it's whatever you guys, I know you discussed it last meeting and I did watch the video, so I am aware of what people were saying. I also understand that some of the cities, like City of Carson, they just ended their pre-sale report. They stopped that, so I think it's the direction to go.
Are there any other comments?
Oh, just a final comment on that clarification. Obviously, anything that we've seen from building and safety in the process is not affected. So if we've got something that we see that needs to be dealt with in that fashion, it still needs to be dealt with when it's brought to attention. So that's it.
Okay, what is the, yes?
Oh, no, you got my card.
You do have public comment. I'm
No, okay, I wasn't made aware. Okay, yes, ma'am. Okay, that's fine.
Pam London. Yeah. Well, let's see. If you don't do the inspection, if you don't require it, if it's not mandated, then again, all these garage conversions go unnoticed and they just continue to proliferate in this city. There's a house on 171st Street that years ago went up for sale. Half the damn house had to be torn down because it was all illegal construction. And had the city not had to come in, wouldn't have been caught. Would not have been caught. So somebody would have bought half a house and gotten a second half. All of your buyers do not do their due diligence. Just like on Gravelia, there was a house and it was listed as 2 properties for sale. 2. It was a single family home. So I started complaining immediately because let's face it, somebody's going to pay $915,000, which they did pay, for 2 units, but clearly it's not 2 units. And again, you had the owner who was the builder owner. Then you had his sister who was the agent, who concocted this BS story all over their little page for sale. So if I'm not reading and I'm not looking, then it gets to go right on through. And if it's not brought to the city's attention, that guy bought 2 rental units. He didn't buy a single family home. And that's because prior to Sean being here, the way things were allowed to be done on that property. There are all kinds of things that are illegal all over the city. And this city, prior to Mr. Reyes, has fallen on its face repeatedly with regard to upholding its own codes. They're there, but unless you have a tattletale, you're not going to catch it. Somebody has to see it and say something about it. And as far as any of these, well, we'll find them. No, you won't find them because you won't see them. And if you don't see them, you, the city, you won't find it. And if somebody doesn't complain, you won't do anything about it. So, I mean, shit. There is artificial turf all over this city in the parkways, but yet the city has never done anything, and that is so illegal. Oh my goodness, it's so illegal. And we don't even want to get on the parkway thing because that's next. But you have got to, as a city, start looking at and correcting all of the mishaps that have been going on for years and years. And we don't want people living in garages or conversions or whatever with faulty electrical, faulty heating, and, well, you know, hey, well, they died, so what? Nobody ever called it to say it wasn't legal.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Randall Laban, West 181st Street. So let me get this straight. This is the 3rd time we're talking about this. Well, the first time was to ban the whole thing, and I didn't think that was a good idea. The second time, what I felt was a good compromise. Okay, let's keep in the illegal conversions. Let's look at those things. Now we're already back to now to just banning it again. Now the idea that the state's going to do certain things is a point that maybe we need to make after those states take effect. I don't think we want to go back and change it again until we wait till the dust settles. And if we change it again now, that means we're going to have more city attorney's time and hours, and we're going to have to come back and spend more staff time revising this again if it doesn't pass as expected tonight. I think tonight's a good compromise. I think we just get this over with, continue with what's been resolved, what's been recommended, and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions after hearing from the public? If not, what is the pleasure of this body concerning item number 8?
Well, as I brought it forward, I will put it up for approval.
I'll second it.
We did go through and discuss the garage issue. I disagree with it, but I understand we need to move forward.
So the motion's been made by Reed and seconded by Mr. Pat Kearney. Are there any discussions or debate on the motion?
I'm just going to say that my vote is going to reflect as a no, because I believe the whole program should be voluntary, and that's the way I'm going.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, would the council please vote?
Or would you like me to read?
Oh, yes. This is the second reading. Thank you.
This is ordinance number 1164-19, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lawndale, California, amending portions of Chapter 8.80 of the Lawndale Municipal Code pertaining to residential property reports and finding of exemption from CEQA. Thank you.
Robert, I want to say one thing.
Yes, sir.
You know, I can totally sympathize with Councilmember Suarez's point of view, because it is true. The state is basically crazy, and they just keep passing stuff that penalizes the city in one form or another. But we've, in the past, had to do things and then come back to the table not too long after anyway, so I think that's going to be the case here. So I'm going to vote for it, but with the realization this is not set in stone. This is going to be an ongoing process.
Thank you for that. Would the council please vote?
Motion approved unanimously with Councilmember Suarez voting no.
Thank you, madam. Next item is item number 9 is review of the city policy concerning parkways. Let's have the staff report. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, and members of the audience. Community Development is shepherding this item for Public Works. This is we've been asked by council to bring back the adopted parkway policy guidelines. They were adopted and reviewed by City Council back in February of 2018. Council took action actually in February 20th. The current policy is in effect, but there was some concerns from council and direction to staff to bring back the item for consideration. Of consideration is the amount of landscaping that was recommended by staff and then adopted by council. All three departments, which include Public Works, MSD, as well as Community Development, worked tirelessly to develop the policy. To work together, we worked 7 to 8 months roughly to bring forward this policy. And what we came up with was a 75%, which is that issue of why we're bringing it back, the 75% coverage of the parkway. Now, as I wanted to show the council some of what we have the standard parkways in Lawndale. They're roughly about 2 to 3 feet wide. It's the area between the sidewalk and the front yard landscaping that's located generally in here, in this location here. As you can see, these are nice parkways throughout the city that I picked out. They look pretty good. They're landscaped. They're over 75%. They're over the minimum amount for the parkways in Lawndale. They're landscaped with turf or grass, as you can see here. And that area there is not part of their front yard. It belongs to the city, and it's maintained by the resident on behalf of the city. So that's why we brought back forth this parkway policy. Throughout the years, there's been some areas where we've had some challenges with some of the residents, particularly with the state and the drought. So what I've seen this on the front yard landscaping, which is not of consideration here, we have a lot of folks throughout the city tearing out the land, the turf or the grass, and then putting in desert scape or putting in just rock or bark and whatnot. So here's some examples for the council's consideration of some parkways that are in violation. This is typically what I see out there in the community. We see this on site plans. Code enforcement will bring in for the parkway, for the front yard landscaping, this one shows, which is not related to the consideration, but they'll put in rock and they'll tear out and just leave it, or it won't be maintained, they'll let the grass die. And you'll see this, or they'll see pavers. Typically we see pavers. This has been the problem we've been running into. Now these pavers are used for several reasons. First, for to save on water and whatnot, conservation, but they're also used for something else to encourage parking pads. We typically see these stones or these pavers put in so they can put a parking pad adjacent or right up over the curb area. This is prolific throughout the city. We see it all over the place. It's not unusual. What we brought this before is the council's asked us in consideration of the guidelines. what the council has mentioned, the 75% rule, is that too much? Is that something, in staff's view, we feel the 75% rule is more than, meets this minimum to cover that landscape area. The reason being is the distance in the areas of the 75% rule. As you can see here, if you reduce, of course, if council decided to reduce it down, it would pose problems for the not getting full coverage if you go down to a 50% standard, a 65% standard. It was not lost on the three departments when we developed these policies and guidelines where we came up with that 75% rule. It was imperative because we figured if you go down to a 50 percentile or a 75 or a 60 or a 65 percentile, it would be difficult to enforce. It's difficult to administer at the counter. It's also difficult to get people to understand. Let me show you a case in point. I'll go back to a parkway. A typical parkway, if you say, let's say if the council decided to go with a less than the 75%, well, if you take a typical parkway, if you went down to 50, that would mean in some configuration here, this would be less than, let's say 50% as just for this conversation. They went below 50, went at 50%. That would mean 50% of this parkway would only be landscape. That's why staff went with the 75 percentile or coverage of the landscaping to ensure we had adequate coverage. We kept with the conformity of the city, what's been historic in the city of Lawndale. Most of the folks in the city we've always maintained 100%, but we gave some deference and provided some deference for a 75% to put in some stones and hardscape for trash cans, walking areas, and etc. This staff feels that the 75% is consistent with the general plan as well as all the policies set forth, and therefore we recommend staying with the 75%. I'll be happy to answer any questions at this time. Thank you.
I have a question.
I know you attempted with the highlighter to show us what a 50% would look like, but do you have an actual picture of one of the parkways that's actually, I know they wouldn't be in conformance, but that would actually be 50%?
I did not provide any, but typically what you would see is if they didn't, it could be any configuration. Of course, council could set policy, have us go back and revise those guidelines, but 50% could be half of that parkway, let's say, just for this topic right here. So 50% of this is their parkway. We could potentially run into an issue with administering a 50 percentile of less than the landscaped area. 75% was something that we deduced that would work for the city, because over the years it's been 100%. Most people had the landscape over 100% of their parkway. But given the needs for trash and people to walk across them, we went with the 75%.
So fresh in my memory, why were we concerned with the 75% coverage? What was our concern that made it go back to staff?
I guess you had received, council had seen complaints from residents that the 75% requirement was too much. But we do, because of conservation of water and other issues, but we did include in the landscaping guidelines, which was attached to the council staff report, numerous examples of landscaping that they can, they don't necessarily have to do grass or turf. They can do landscaping. They can also do landscaping that's almost similar to grass, that grows like a mildform, that grows real hard, it's very hardy. You can actually walk on it, and it stays green and lush. And we were just asking for something to have some coverage. Because typically right now, if you see out there throughout the city, not everywhere, because I drove the city last week, you typically see folks not maintaining it, or it's just dead, or there's nothing there, or unfortunately we do have a lot of cases with the pavers, and we do have a lot of the rock. We did discover that the water agencies were actually going around and offering rebates, and then they were offering rebates to residents to take out the grass and turf and stuff. But in the guidelines, it does clearly give them alternatives, not just grass. So they do have low maintenance, low water using type alternatives afforded to the residents. Our concern obviously is the 75%. If you go below, and typically Lawndale was 100%, we went down below our 100% requirement. We're still allowing some areas to be hardscaped.
Okay, got it.
Good analysis, Sean.
Thank you.
I don't know if I made the comment the last time this was brought up. I remember a former councilman was up here, and I didn't always agree with a lot of what he said, but he said Lawndale's going to turn into no longer Lawndale, it's going to be Concrete Dale if it keeps going the way it's been going. And I said he's absolutely right. Good analysis, Sean, and I think 75% is the way to stay with it. because you do want to have some ability to percolate rainwater through the soil, because there's all these issues with NPDES and so forth. But you're right also that it doesn't have to necessarily be turf. There's other vegetation substitutions that could be in there, but it should be 75% as a number.
I have a question. What feedback have we been getting from residences that have the violations? What?
You know, I believe a lot of the cases have been placed on hold, pending to getting this over to you, council, for reconsideration. And my apologies for getting it to you later, but they've been on hold for about a year, I think.
And what have they been shooting for? What percentages?
Yeah, Sean is correct. We do have a number of cases that have been on hold for about a year while this was debated and discussed. Any property that has a parkway issue as well as other violations, the parkway issue will be, that's what's holding it back from being closed once they've corrected whatever else they need to correct. So we do have about a dozen cases that are just parkway issues. Like many of the homeowners that have cases against them, of course, they don't want the law to be what it is. We've explained to them the 75% is the existing rule, and they can have up to 25% of hardscape or something else if they'd like to do that. Some have spent quite a bit of money. In one of the photos, I think, Sean, that concrete one in the middle, that's not a small endeavor. That's going to cost fairly good amount of money. So to remove it, they don't want to do that. And then
So
more
they're
money
looking at all concrete.
Yeah, their own costs. But again, some of the concerns are parking issues. We know that people put the concrete down and pavers down so they can access parking pads, or especially illegal parking pads. So
Now with 25%, you can still accommodate a walkway if you had a wheelchair access or whatever.
Yeah, or it gives some freedom of design to the homeowner. So.
I just wanted to point out to council, it did, when staff worked on this, we considered every angle, some consideration. We did get some input from staff, from the residents too. So we just, you know, we didn't stick with the 100%. We did allow some hardscape to help out the residents.
Yeah, and I think I'm fine with the 75%. The only things that I have concern on the parkway policy is the 6-inch growth. We have a lot of decorative plants that are California friendly that grow 10, 12, 18 inches that are actually already in place in several places through the city that look nice. You have one of the pictures in the package of a property like that. So that 6-inch maximum is the only thing that I really have a concern with. Then I have a question in regards to the 75%, because I see this also in California-friendly landscaping. We're requiring installation of a certain percentage, yet that plant's going to grow. So if you have a patch and you're putting 50% worth of what's going to grow there in 6 months to finish the remaining cover, it's all there, but we're actually having people buy additional plants, not leaving any growth, so then it kind of runs into itself, and some of that's a problem. You know, just was any of that considered in that process?
Yeah, you brought up a very important point. We struggle with that on the front yard landscaping. We're trying to save folks money so they don't have to hire a landscape architect and irrigation expert, because technically when you put in those desert plants, you're supposed to put them in based on the size, the range, and the climate of the area. We do ask them to try to get as close as they can, but they tend to grow. If they can demonstrate to the department, I'm sure with Public Works as well, that they'll meet the 50% or the 75%, let's say, then we would allow it. Typically, the ground covers will grow out to that. They're small, they're placed 1 foot on center, and they're separated out. So we do work with them on the ground cover. With the smaller succulents, which I think is where you may have heard some concerns from residents, we ask them to provide the data in the background. But we do have a sheet that we can look at and look at its growth. But again, it's based on the type of irrigation, the sun exposure, and the climate. So sometimes they ask for a few months to allow it to grow in before we finalize the front yard, let's say just for front yard landscaping along with the parking, the parkway permits as well.
Yeah, so the point is you're educating them, working with them, allowing that, not requiring every single inch be covered with growth when it's installed.
That's correct.
But knowing how much it's going to grow and take care of that 75%.
Yes, and we have a Western Garden book. Is the typical book is for the expert. And a lot of it does have to do with their irrigation. So if they're properly irrigating it and it has the proper soil types, then it shall grow to that and meet that. But there are some plants that residents unfortunately have proposed, and they actually stay based on the diameter. We've asked them to add in more. Not on the parkways so much, we don't typically see that. It's on the front yard landscaping.
Right. No, I understand that. So like I said, for my colleagues, the only thing is the 6-inch limitation. We've got a lot more very nice-looking parkways that are over 6 that have been approved and put in. And I think by putting it down to 6 inches, we're going to create an issue for ourselves from that, so.
The only thing I would think, Dan, if you go too high, you're gonna have to be a person that always is aware of your passenger exiting the car and opening the door. You're gonna be able to clear it.
Yeah,
maybe.
I don't have an issue with that. I'm just saying, 6 to 10 inches is one thing, 6 inches maximum
Oh, I hear
is
you.
another.
Yeah, and if you have a higher profile vehicle, your door may clear it entirely, but for the average car.
Yeah, or some of those grasses that grow 5 feet tall that we don't want up there, The purpose is to be able to have it look nice,
Right.
still be able to get through it and not be blocking.
Exactly.
So what is your proposal on that? Make sure we're clear on that. Do we need to?
I would
change it?
extend it to 12 inches maximum in regards to that style of landscape. For walkable, obviously, that's one thing, but there are several plants that would fit in those that, you have just this piece, then you've got a highlight plant that's maximum 12 inches.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Depending on the plant, some are flexible and they'll just lay over a car door, people step on it. Some of it
Yeah, I've seen some
won't
of those,
recover.
the one that's flexible like that would just, you open the car door, then they kind of bend with
Some
the car
things,
door.
cactus and succulents, they get stepped on, they're not coming back right away, if not at all. So it
Right,
really depends on
and
the plant.
a well thought out one
Yeah.
that goes through
Some will
there
take
is
foot
not going to
traffic.
be at a door entry, so.
You know, ivies and lantanas, you can walk on those and they come right
Exactly.
back. But other stuff is pretty delicate.
I wouldn't want to be walking on ice plant, though.
No.
Okay, well, I guess we need to consider.
Just a conversation
if we
point for
wanna-
us.
If we want to change that in the policy. I have one issue I want us to take a look at as well, that's on, I guess this is page 2. Is this page 2? Where it talks about the contractor. So for me, I don't think it was, if I recollect, that it was the issue of the 75% coverage, but more so on when it's required to have a licensed contractor that's opposed to a homeowner doing the project themselves. So if I'm reading this correctly, correct me if I'm not correct, about obtaining a conditional encroachment permit. In some cases, you may need a conditional encroachment permit, which would require a licensed contractor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so that's a great question. That actually came up as a topic of discussion at city management team. Kahona Ono's not here, our public works director, but he did say that you would still need an encroachment permit, which is minimal, but he would not require a contractor to install the landscaping so long as they weren't digging down and hitting pipes and whatnot. But he would take a look at, any infrastructure that would be there, but he was willing to work with the residents to install it themselves as like owner builder. And that same goes for our front yard landscaping. We don't require as long as that's in 2,400 square feet. So in these areas, I don't know any parkways in the city of Lawndale that exceed that. The public works director was amenable to working with residents and allowing them to install it and not requiring a contractor, unless there was some significant improvements in the right-of-way or any major changes to infrastructure or impacts.
Okay, great, because that was my concern, not requiring a licensed contractor. So we can revise the parkway design criteria to reflect when it's necessary and when it's not necessary to have a licensed contractor.
Yep, we'll make those changes subject to the council's.
Okay, let's take some public comment if we may. Yes, ma'am.
Ham London, 171st. I have the only legal, done from start to finish, legal paver parkway, other than those that Frank handed out garbage crap to. But we'll not even get into Frank, will we? Regardless, I did have to have a licensed and insured contractor. The people that were in the Public Works Department at that time, prior to Frank, thank you, made sure that, number one, my contractor was licensed with the state of California, licensed with the city of Lawndale. Also checked his insurance to make sure that his insurance was in good standing. Because, again, the parkway is city property, not residential property, city property. So at that time, that it was approved so that I could have those pavers because of the problems I was experiencing, I was, put on notice that if I'm going to do the work, it's going to require this. So I have a $3,000, and it's actually more than a $3,000 parkway. So parkways, I feel that I have more rights than most in this city to talk about. And nobody had approval for plants that are above 6 inches. They weren't approved because nobody ever pulled a permit. And actually, there's always been a permit process in this city, believe it or not. And Casey would be one to tell you that if you're digging out your parkway, Casey got busted for digging out the parkway and digging out that grass. So he had to go and get a permit. Not to throw that one out there, but still, there's always been a shortness. There's never been anything allowed with thorns either. But you see all over this city where there are things that are really tall in those parkways, and lots of weeds that are really tall, but we won't go there either. But people have planted stuff, they put in that rock. I have turned in rocks where the rock is literally falling over the curb into the drainage system. We don't need any rocks clogging up the city drainage system. But, that was nobody saying anything. Again, I don't care what water companies were or were not doing, still required a permit. That permit was gained at the Public Works Department. But how many permits do you really think were requested? Because I've had that information and talked to you guys about that information multiple times. Practically zero. So if you stay at the 75%, maybe I can shut up about it. But if you go above 75 or below 75 as it is, I got a lot to say about that.
Thank you. Okay, are there any further discussions, anything else anyone would like to see in the policy?
No.
Oh, and by the way, just so that I'm clear, I was not clear, but I was okay with the encroachment permit itself. I'm okay with that.
Got that, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
It was the license contract report that I was concerned about.
I'll make a motion to go with staff's recommendation.
With the amendments?
Yeah, have to be some amendments, yeah.
I'll second it.
And can you? So the motion's been made that we go with staff recommendations, incorporating the amendments that we spoke about.
So just so I'm clear, Mr. Mayor, we'd be going with the, going from 6 to 12 inches in the landscaping and working, and also not requiring with the requirement of the encroachment permit required in the public works process, but not requiring a contractor to install the.
Yeah, unless it meets what you were speaking of, if they go down a certain depth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you're going to put in there 6 to 12 inches, or changing it from 6 inches to 12 inches?
We could.
No, 12-inch
update-
maximum.
Yeah, 12 is the maximum, we could put maximum 12 and update the guidelines accordingly.
Okay.
It's throughout the document where it says 6 inches, so we'd have to go and just amend it 6 to 12 with maximum.
To be clear, it would be, some of the plants can be 12 inches, correct? Not all of them?
Yeah, you
Because
wouldn't
still
want all of
people
them.
to be
You
able to
wouldn't-
walk on it?
Yeah.
Well, you're going to have 25% available for a walkway or path to go between the space of the parkway itself.
Okay, so.
So
and
you
the
could have 12
75% it could
inches
all
of
be up to
vegetation
12
on either
inches.
side
Okay.
of a, let's say, a 6-foot wide to the curb to sidewalk pathway between in the middle of the parkway.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
That would make sense.
But would just so that I'm clear, so
As a
would,
maximum.
so would every plant?
No, but only
A
as a
certain type
maximum, I
of
think is
plants.
what he's suggesting.
No,
No, it's not in every plant.
Certain type
You
of
know,
plant.
It's not in every plant, so
Right.
just a maximum of 12 within that landscape design. You know you're gonna open a door, you need a walkable path
Right.
right there, whatever that particular piece is. You've got some highlight pieces, they're a maximum of 12 inches.
Okay.
Yeah,
You
and
understand.
just so the council, on the attachment of the guidelines, we provide a plant list. So not all, so there's a lot of low ground cover that are low. They kind of grow 6 inches, but the tall succulents, the taller plants that are drought tolerant tend to grow a little taller. So, and we can work with them on the landscape palette and ensure and put it appropriate throughout the document.
Okay.
Yeah.
No redwood trees.
Okay.
And that's not 12 inches of uncut weeds and grass.
No.
Okay. All right, so we got all the amendments, right? We feel good about the amendments. Okay.
See the ballot.
So the motion's been made. Who made the motion?
I did.
I seconded.
Okay, so the motion been made by Osborne and seconded by Kearney. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, would the council please vote?
Motion approved unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's approved. Let's go to our next item. Okay, next item on our agenda is item number 10. Actually, we're on items from council members, item number 10. This, renaming the city's annual music festival. This item was put on the agenda by Mr. Pat Kearney, Councilman Pat Kearney. Who wants to speak on this item first?
Yes, I'll go ahead and open it up.
Yes, ma'am.
During the last meeting, Councilmember Kearney asked that an item be brought back for discussion by council. It's a recommendation to rename the city's annual blues festival to Lawndale Music Festival, and its appeal to the Lawndale community. So from this discussion, staff hope to receive some direction from you as to whether or not you would like for us to agendize this item in the future meeting to rename this festival, and I'll turn it over to Councilmember Kearney.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know, I'm not getting away from blues, Councilman Osborne, Mayor Pro Tem Osborne. But if you look at the diversity of this city, what's the majority in this city? Latinos. We have no Hispanic music at all in this museum. We have the older Lawndalians that live down the street from me. They said, what about big band music? I grew up on doo-wop, Motown, 60s and 70s. People down the street grew up on country western music. We have to open it up to the residents of Lawndale, not just what we think. We can still have blues in there, but we can have a multitude of things. Latino music. I grew up on flutes and drums, Native American music. We have a multitude of things, and we have diversity in the city that we're responsible for, not just blues.
All right, let me give some history on this, because I think you're mischaracterizing some things. About 8 years ago, a member of Park and Rec addressed the entire council because they have an abundance of funds from their fireworks sales. And the council directive at the time that was allowed for them to sell fireworks was that they were supposed to spend the money on the city for events, activities, and it wasn't happening. And this member of Park and Rec knew that. So he addressed the council saying, give us some ideas, give us some direction. So I spoke to the guy and I said, well, you know, Gardena has a jazz festival. Why don't we have a blues festival as a contrast? He goes, oh, great idea. And he tried to present it to Park and Rec, and it just kind of languished. It didn't go anywhere. It didn't develop. And then he asked me to come and address it. So I came to the meeting, and I did. And I said, you know, why don't you try it out, see how it goes, because we're not doing anything currently. And they did. And I think Mike Estes will attest to the fact that when we first did it, it went off very well. We did it a second time, a third, a fourth, a fifth. Every year it's grown. Now we're looking at our 8th year of this event. And people love it, they come to it, they enjoy it. We incorporated the car show with it. I've heard no criticisms of it until now. And I would add to you that if you want to have a second event, there's nothing preventing you from going the same path I did, addressing Park and Rec, present a second event.
Why do we need a second event?
Because you're the one requesting a variety of music. Why not have a second event?
Why don't we have a music festival? Mr. Estes, how does your Park and Rec feel right now about changing? Are they in favor of changing or keeping it Blues Festival?
I don't have a council and city, honorable mayor and city council members. I don't have a real good beat on that. I think they might be a little bit split, but I think they're interested in doing whatever benefits the community. And, you know, Parks and Rec doesn't fund this event anymore. As you remember, I think it was maybe 3 years ago, I think the funding of the event went to the general fund. So they may have funds to promote a second event, possibly.
Mike, the last time that the council asked about what they had on hand as far as funds, it was over 100,000, wasn't it?
They're very close to that. I want to say after their recent resolutions, they're about 90, right about 90, give or take a couple thousand.
Yeah, Pat, I just don't see why you're trying to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Why you're always changing or trying. You did the same thing with the parade. I mean, the kids loved the Pirates Parade, and all of a sudden that had to go by the wayside. It's just
What do you
You're always trying to change
You
what
don't get out in
people
the public,
enjoy.
you don't walk the city, and you don't talk to people. When I walk home from the Jazz Blues Festival, people say, why don't you have Latino music? Why don't you have country western? Why don't you have the 50s?
Then why don't you do as I suggest and go to Park and Rec and try to present a second event?
Why do we need a second one when we have one? All we're
I
doing
would
is
throw the
changing,
question back,
we're
why do you wanna
changing
kill
the
the one that
title
we
to
have?
music festival. We still have the blues. Can we have three other bands in there?
We could. We could have a second, third, fourth event. Some cities do. They do multiple events. I know Torrance does something called Wild Wednesdays, or I think it's like a month or two. Every week they have a different event.
Let's comment from the rest of the council if they have any.
I say no.
Let's hear from Councilman Suarez.
I do have, I mean, looking at this from, usually you can gauge people's interest based on their attendance and whatnot. So, I mean, in comparison to all of our other events, how would you rate, the Blues Festival to staff? I'm going to ask you, Mike.
The event itself or attendance?
Like involvement, engagement, people showing up. I mean, from what I've seen through the past years, it seemed pretty successful.
Yeah, I would say this past year, September 14th, well, this year, we had our 7th, and I believe it was the largest attendance we've had, like around about 3 o'clock. I don't count people head by head, but I can get pretty close. I think we had about 600 or 700 there at one time, late in the afternoon, and I think probably throughout the day, people coming and going. Some people come early, leave early. Some people go home and have lunch and come back. I think our attendance was probably 1,500 approximately, give or take 100 or so.
And so you're seeing a steady increase in attendance?
I'm seeing maybe 100, 200 person increase every year. And one thing, if I could add, if you don't mind me adding, is that Parks and Rec has discussed in the past a Concert in the Park series. And that's something that would be open to funding. And I think, there's several cities that do one per month in the summer, June, July, August. You can, fit in 3 different genres if you want, or even more during one summer. They have discussed potentially sponsoring an event like that in the past as well.
And then another concern is one of the things about, I don't think the time frame, usually with music festivals, I mean, usually they do kind of focus on one genre or another, unless it's, multiple days, then that kind of opens it up. But, I mean, I do like the concerts in the park idea. That sounds good. So I don't know if that's something we can also explore as well.
Well, staff would love to run something like that. Like I said, I think Parks and Rec would probably fund something like that. And once again, they're interested in doing things that the community wants to see. And as far as staff concerned, we love it, whatever it is. We're here to do the job, and whatever our marching orders are, we'll do it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I understand both ends of the equation here, and there have been people that ask, why don't we do something besides just blues? I think it might be beneficial to look into doing something secondary, doing something like the concert in the park. But actually, just flat out, let's quiz the residents. How do they feel about it? I think it's been a very successful event. I think a mix of music to it wouldn't actually hurt it, but rather than just the 5 of us making a decision, quiz the customer. Let's quiz the constituents. Do they want to see more of this style of information? A lot of folks, regardless of the time, are going to say that doesn't work for me.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I think that would be a good meet in the middle for us to take a look at.
I just think it's wrong to just kill something that's already successful.
Right. At the same point, we can also look at what's the cost factor of what here, because off the top of my head, I don't know. I'm not going to put you on the spot for it. How much are we putting out to put that together? Do we still have the funds? Park and Recs does have some funds, but how long could they do it? Because you see, these become successful, they become a long-term process.
Councilman, we spend $9,000 on this event. We do a lot for $9,000, and we stay within budget every time. And we have a few bands that play pro bono, and that helps. But that's a pretty good rate for a full day of music, I think. And we'd be happy to do a community survey if that's what the body wants to see.
So the city of Carson they have a few different, I know two that I go to every year, and I believe they have at least three, but I go to two pretty much every year. I'm in the city of Carson. Typically during the summer, or I think one is actually maybe in the fall as well. But you're right, with a music, if it's a music festival, you do kind of want, unless it's over a certain amount of days, you want the music to be a certain genre of music. Too much variety, you don't get enough people that's interested, that's a following when it's too much of a variety. Unless it's day one, so you know what you're gonna get. If it's day one, it's all country, day two, it's all opera, day three is all, hip hop, then you know which day, to show up, right? But if it's too much variety within that one day, my fear is, formerly working, I've worked for a concert promoter before. Some people, if they decide, well, I don't want to have anything to do with hip hop, right? And I'm not going to sit through all this other music just to get to that one band that I want to listen to that's going to play for an hour. They won't show up. And likewise, the other people who want to see the other genre of music won't show up if it's too much variety. Unless you're talking about a real big event, which, our city is not even big enough to hold such an event, that you might see like in the city of LA or something where 20,000 people show up, something like that. That's a different story. So you want to kind of stick with one genre of music if it's going to be a one-day event. Notwithstanding that, music in the parks have been successful because when you go to Manhattan Beach's Music in the Park, it is a certain genre. It's going to be, day one is going to be rock and roll, or next day might be 60s or what have you, so you govern yourself accordingly or what have you. If you like both, you go. If not, you don't go that particular day or what have you. But we want to make sure if we do another festival that it is a type of music, because we've done it in the past where we had it spread out over a couple of days, and it wasn't that successful, and it could have been a multitude of reasons why. That doesn't mean it won't be successful this time. For me, it was the music. That was just me. I'll come for a few minutes, but that was about it. I don't know about speaking for anyone else or what have you, why it wasn't successful. Of course, that was about maybe 15 years ago or so, maybe. But you want to be very careful to make sure that if it's, if you're gonna have a music series in whatever genre is that day, it's something where you're gonna get a following, and it's not just a feel-good endeavor. Like for instance, we do big band. Yeah, some people may come out to see big band, but will they come out to see big band in the city of Lawndale and the surrounding communities? You don't want to throw a party and nobody show up just because it was a good idea, right? But certain music, they probably will. If you have Latin Cuban, night, yeah, I'm sure there'll be, salsa in the standing room, only. Maybe if you had hip hop, you got to be kind of careful with that as well. A lot of people in the surrounding communities will come as well. You just got to kind of be careful to make sure it's not just country and western. As much as I'm from Oklahoma and I love country, how many people are going to show up for country? They don't even do western anymore, so just country, right? As much as I would like to see a country band, I don't know about a whole day, a festival of country music. That would be kind of more like a feel-good thing if we did that. But you just got to kind of be careful in selecting the type of music. But I'm interested in seeing how it goes or what have you, and then just see.
Yeah, and secondarily, every once in a while we'll have a band that just doesn't show up on time, takes forever to set up. They've only got an hour and 15 minutes to get things done. That could throw a major monkey wrench in and just bring a whole calamity of arguments. Yeah. So, it'd make, like I said, I can see both sides of it. I think a good survey for the community. Look at sponsored events, so that we can spread it out. Maybe we do a 3-day weekend where we have it 3 separate days,
Yeah, and maybe they say, well, this town there's only room for one festival for one day in this town. That might, that could be true as well. Depending on the interest, like Councilwoman Suarez said, maybe we're not as interested in seeing two festivals.
Built momentum on this for 7 years, and I think you run the risk of losing it.
Well, maybe we can do a poll and then see too what other people are interested in and the possibilities of maybe making this a bigger bigger event over several days and see, you know, kind of get a poll and see what people are saying. And then also one of the things too, I really hope that we're trying to get more sponsorships, you know, from vendors and whatnot, just, you know, and then this could give us the extra funds to make that happen.
Okay,
Okay, so
is that
just
enough
to,
go
just to
by?
clarify, you would like for staff to conduct a survey and
Yes.
then report back to you what those findings are, and then we can make a decision at that
Yeah.
point?
Yeah.
Okay,
It
sounds
doesn't
good.
have to be a scientific, you know, survey, but you know,
Okay.
you get what we mean.
Yeah, I get it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Lawndale or something.
Okay, next item on our agenda is item number 12 for the mayor and council members' report. Any attendance or meetings you want to share? I went Oklahoma on you for a second there. Anyone wants to share anything about a meeting that they attended on behalf of the city of Lawndale? Let's start with council member.
No meetings in this past 2 weeks.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I attended 3 things. I think all 3 things I attended with Mayor Robert. The South Bay Web Annual Awards Dinner
Oh, yeah.
on the 10th of October. We also attended the Beacon Awards Dinner, which we got a beautiful plaque for being 29% green. Was it 20?
29%, yeah, energy efficiency.
Okay, and then I attended the conference and was a delegate for the city. I made the city proud, Robert.
You did?
I did, yeah. And then on Saturday, I attended the Fort MacArthur Centennial. And when I came back from active duty, I was stationed there, and it's changed immensely. They have housing there. I talked to a colonel there. He said, there's still some of the old buildings, but it's all housing for the Air Force. And with that, I'll pass it on.
I must have got there late. I was there too.
Okay.
Did you get a shirt?
I
Right.
was there for the pledge and everything.
Oh, okay.
Oktoberfest?
Okay. Councilwoman Suarez.
I've been under the weather for the past couple weeks, so I have nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Glad you're feeling better. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I attended, as I said earlier, the league event, and I'd have to look up in the minutes who that speaker was who for making those remarks, because that was a room full of electeds. He was giving all these stats on the state legislature.
It just sounded good at the time, you know.
It was like a breakdown survey that he did on everything. So he's giving out false information. And then I likewise attended the Fort MacArthur 100th anniversary. I really enjoyed that. I got there for the grand beginning of the ceremony and the singing of the Pledge of Allegiance and everything. And it was a nice display they put on the museum people from up on the hill above. And I had some photographs that were in my family from 100 years ago when the fort first opened. I brought down there. They really enjoyed seeing that stuff. And it's nice. I remember the old days you could go on there pre-9/11, and now it's, you know, post that, it's very secure, but it's still very historic, nice warm day out there, and a lot of flyovers from aircraft and everything. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. So I attended the sanitation district meeting, our regular monthly meeting, where we discussed our water recycling project that we are doing with Metropolitan Water District, where we're taking, get this, a lot of the former solid waste, right, and we're turning it into recycled water, right, for irrigation purposes, and it's also fit for consumption, but it will be used for recycled water for irrigations, but technically it is fit for consumption according to the health department and, you know, those who regulate those type of activities. Oh, no, it's not ready yet. It's just a facility that we just dedicated. So. And I also attended the California League of Cities, where I attended the Beacon Awards along with Councilman Pat Kearney, and for our energy efficiency programs, where we have achieved a 29% energy savings. We received the platinum level spotlight award. See, this is the covenant, you know, plaque. Don't laugh.
We've had the award, but we never got the plaque before.
The covenant plaque, you know, for receiving, for achieving, I should say, the 25% energy savings from the Institute of Local Government and the Statewide Energy Efficiency Collaborative. And so this is, we usually say this is fit for framing, but there's no frame necessary, huh? Yeah. So there it is. See,
They're cutting back.
cutting back, but it is platinum. And I also attended a number of seminars, two of which I found pretty interesting. Well, there was a few interesting, but the ones that I found most interesting, I should say, would be housing. Everyone knows housing is a big issue for the cities in the state of California, and the housing crisis. In particular, there was talk about the RENA numbers that's coming out that most cities are not particularly happy with. I understand our numbers is 392, something to that effect, or 94 proposed units that we supposed to come up with. Well, I was told as of, maybe this is was fake news, but I called a member of the staff and they gave me 395. Which was 395? Okay, maybe that was 3,095 because there was one city that's not too much bigger than Lawndale. Well, it might be 8 square miles, and they claimed that their numbers was 3,000, units, a little more than 3,000. Of course, they were horrified at the fact that they are responsible for ensuring that 3,000 units or more are built, lest the governor comes down on them and see them in court. Whatever the numbers is too high for a city that's built out, such as the city of Lawndale. And we surely have done our part in terms of providing the opportunities for housing, but we will continue to do our share of housing. And I want to make sure that we are involved with SCAG because, of course, they're doing the numbers, so we want to make sure that we're in those discussions so that once it's all said and done, we won't be stuck with the numbers that I was told, which is whatever the numbers happen to be, they're way too high for the city of Lawndale. Another good seminar I went to was municipal finances. This was a great seminar, and you wouldn't think there would be a lot of people in a municipal finance, seminar that are not, that does not work for the finance department. But this was one of the, this seminar was full. Apparently there's a lot of interest in municipal finance these days, and they went over all the different mechanisms, how to work with your finance director and your treasurer and all those. It was very enlightening for me. So those were the two most helpful seminars that I went to. I also went to the South Bay Workforce Investment Dinner, as Pat Kearney alluded to. And I wasn't able to make the honorary, I wasn't able to make the MacArthur, is it MacArthur? Fort MacArthur 100th anniversary, there you go. Although I am an honorary commander because one of my colleagues in the state legislature was getting married that day. And so I had to be in Claremont. I had to drive way out to Claremont for his wedding. Otherwise I would have been there. Other than that, that's all I have. And I've been apprised that it's 8:30. Well, we have to 9:30. We have the room to 9:30. You're supposed to laugh at that. That was like a joke. But okay, with that, we will move to our closed session. We do have 2 closed sessions. I'm going to ask the city attorney to read the provision for which we will go under.
We actually only need 1 closed session.
We just need
tonight.
one today.
Yeah,
Which one we which one we need? Which one we don't need?
K-13. K-12 we'll have on the 4th.
Okay, so we will remove 12 from the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead and read
So
it.
it's a public employee performance evaluation and compensation regarding the office of the city attorney. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll stay in recess.
Okay.
Okay, we have returned from closed session. I'm going to ask the city attorney to give the report of the closed session.
The city council met in closed session. The council was updated. No reportable action. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me see. Okay, now it's time to adjourn. The next regular scheduled meeting of the Lawndale City Council will be held at 6:30 p.m. Monday, November the 4th in these chambers. It is now 8:45. We are adjourned.